Hi, you're watching DNA Today, a multi-award winning genetics podcast where we explore everything to do with genetics, from CRISPR to rare diseases to new research. We have won the Science and Medicine Podcast Award for many years now. We have hundreds of episodes, and we really hope you enjoy these conversations where we dive into so many genetic concepts. I'm Kira Deneen, a certified genetic counselor, and your host. We are at NSGC in Seattle this year, and we're going to be doing lightning interviews. So talking with attendees on what they learned. Grace, you were starting us off. So what's something you learned or a talk that was fascinating or something that you're walking away with the conference with?
Yeah, so one thing I learned was from the Why Am I Reacting This Way countertransference talk. I feel like we're often trained as genetic counselors to be really neutral and not react to patients, but it's actually better to be aware of how your past experiences and your experiences might impact how you're interacting with patients, and how just being aware of it is more important than trying to be super neutral in all patient interactions.
Yeah, and I think that's more human, right? To not just be a robot and be able to respond to what they're saying and really lean into that counseling part of our title.
Yeah.
Celine, what did you learn at the conference? What's something that you were taking away or a talk that you found really fascinating?
Yeah, something that I found really fascinating was data privacy and how HIPAA does and doesn't cover certain things that I thought it did. Navigating the impact of the 21st Century Cures Act was a talk that I was fascinated by and something that I want to learn more about, especially about how it impacts our patients and consenting them to genetic testing for the future.
Yeah, and I think important for us to be aware of policies that are trying to be changed and how we can support those, or maybe there's some that we don't want to support, and reaching out to our representatives to be able to do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Sophia, what is something that you learned or a session that you found interesting that you're walking home with?
I think I was on Friday or Thursday. It was a talk in regards for like what to do when you're stuck. So they were talking about something called like logos therapy. So asking questions that are maybe right now I'm not very comfortable doing as a second year student, but something to consider in the future. They did an example where a patient comes in who had lost their brother at 44, who had TDAD. And it's like, yeah, I'm 44, I'm healthy, and I thought my brother was healthy, and he just like passed away unexpectedly. It's like, oh, have you ever thought about your own death? And it's like, wow, that's kind of like one of those questions you're like, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable about it, but I would love to like maybe learn a little bit more on how to bring those deeper conversations, because especially somebody has a personal loss so close to home that you think about those kind of things. And it kind of makes me reflect with my own like countertransference. I wanted to do the countertransference talk, but I know one of my supervisors actually did it. So I'm going to probably like pick her brain on that instead.
Yes. And I think what's awesome is that if you've attended the conference, you're able to watch the recorded part. So the sessions that I missed that I really want to go to, or that I caught a little bit of and I want to see the full thing, it's going to be available in about 2 weeks from NSGC.
Good to know. I'll definitely do that, because I know I was hearing about it and I was like, I didn't see it on the app yet. So right. I was expecting maybe later.
Yes. Yeah. They got to, it takes a little time to produce and edit and everything. So awesome. Well, thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me, Kira. I love to get a Today podcast.
So. Thank you so much for listening. All right. We have a longtime listener, Cristina. So what is something that you're taking away from the conference?
I learned a lot about where the field is going in terms of genome sequencing in the prenatal pre-implantation space. It was most interesting to hear from the audience on disability perspectives, the disability community's perspectives on this. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, thinking about it differently and just seeing, how advanced the technology is, but also looking at the other side of, should we be doing this? Is this something that we should kind of reconsider for a minute, take a step before we implement it?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think anything that makes us think differently than we have been before, to me, that's a really successful session.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed that.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, I'm with Kim now. So tell me something that you're walking away from the conference about.
Yeah, so this summer I got the opportunity to be in inpatient setting. And so I went to the peri-mortem an inpatient counseling session, and I felt like so validated when the speakers were telling me that like you're human. So if you are grieving, even though it's not you personally who's going through this, like it's okay, because like we're all human and we're allowed to like have emotions beyond things that are happening to us.
I think that's a really good point, and just reminding people, I think especially that are working in that space, that it's how can you not have an emotional reaction to this? And I have a good friend, Becca Abel, who used to be a student of mine that works in inpatient, and I think it is something that we do need to be able to talk to each other about and process and have those go-to people that we can do that with, or a therapist or something in a more formal setting. So it's really great that they were able to highlight that.
Yeah. And then they gave us kind of like breathing tips, like just taking a deep breaths to kind of like realign ourselves to like go into the next session and like, but obviously not to ignore any of the emotions that we're feeling.
I really like square breathing, where you look at a square and you kind of like, okay, breathe in, hold, breathe out, and then hold, and then you just keep doing that. My mom's a therapist, so that's something that, she taught me very early on. All right, when you're feeling anxious, this is one of the skills to lean in on. And yeah, I wish that we learn more about those traditional counseling skills, and it's great when we do have sessions that dive into that further.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated the speakers like kind of giving us they told us to look up gifts while we were like if we're practicing in a clinic, and then kind of following like if there's like a little coaster, kind of following the breathing like outline like that.
There's some awesome apps too that really like pull you in that way and everything. So awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Kim. Yeah, we got to get to the rest of the conference.
So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I'm sitting here with Kate Wilson, who I know very well, despite this is only our second time in person together, but my goodness, do we have a lot of projects over the years together.
We do.
So for those that don't know, you are the producer of 2 shows and also co-host of one, host of the other. So we'll break that down a little bit. So DNA Dialogues is the official podcast for the Journal of Genetic Counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're the producer there, along with your awesome co-hosts.
Yes.
Cal and Naomi. And you also have your own show, All Access DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these shows are under the new podcast network that we started, Gene Pool Media.
The fabulous Gene Pool Media.
Yeah. I think as far as I'm aware, it's the only science podcast network. I think we have the corner of the market there, which is kind of crazy.
I like it.
Yeah. And so we did a pre-conference workshop that you actually coordinated, you moderated, you did all the hard work so that we could just get up on stage and share some wisdom.
You guys had the hard part with sharing all your background, your information, your tips, your insights. So I just appreciate you doing that.
No, I feel like you did all the hard legwork. But what I liked how we started the session was we all gave a little bit of background information in terms of where our journey started in genetics or entrepreneurship and kind of like how it's come to be. I have said I don't want to say the end of the book because you're not at the end of your career, but I've kind of said where you're at right now. But can you back up a little bit in terms of where you've come from? Because you've been in clinic, you've been in industry. So tell us a little bit about the background of how you got here.
Yeah. So I usually start it, especially when I'm talking to like students, I was like, your career, you never know where it's going to go. You might have an idea and then it just goes completely sideways. So I always thought I was going to end up doing cancer care in Georgia. That's where I'm originally from. And so I ended up doing prenatal in Houston, Texas. But my ultimate goal is to work with a training program. And that's how I got to Houston and actually fell in love with prenatal, fell in love with the patients. But still wanted to continue to do cancer. So at the time, Houston was a test market for a company that was trying to advertise directly to patients to ask their doctor about BRCA testing. So we had a lot of physicians that didn't know what to do with the patients that were asking them about it. So we were able to start several clinics in the greater Houston area, and I was able to move into cancer. But after doing that, which again, I loved, I was starting to get frustrated because there were lots of tests on the market at that point. The Supreme Court had overturned the BRCA patent.
So this is 2015-ish?
2013.
2013-ish. Okay.
Yeah. And so Angelina Jolie came out and said that she had tested positive. So there was a huge surge in testing. But a lot of physicians that either weren't sure what type of test to order, the panel testing had just come up, next-gen sequencing was a huge thing. So there was just a lot of folks that weren't sure what to order, what was most appropriate. And then we had a lot of labs that were billing crazy bills because the coding hadn't caught up to next-gen sequencing panels. So I had a lot of patients that were getting very large explanation of benefits or EOBs. And I realized if I work on the industry side, I could really move the needle on the physician education, as well as working with insurance, coding, policy, to really try to figure out how do we bring next-gen sequencing to the masses without it costing an arm and a leg.
Which has happened. Oh, you're one of the people that really, as you said, moved the needle.
I take complete credit.
Yeah, so actually Kate Wilson is the person that we have to thank for all of genetic testing being hundreds of dollars as opposed to thousands.
But it was really cool being on the industry side and started out as a lab genetic counselor. And then I was saying, as we were talking, I was like, I noticed every time I have a career change, it's because I just got really frustrated or mad about things.
Yeah. And that's such a great theme that I think I hear from entrepreneurs all the time. That was the focus of our pre-conference workshop of talking about entrepreneurship and like starting a business and whether that's a side hustle, consulting, or like a full-time gig. And usually it starts out as a side hustle and then maybe becomes a full-time gig.
Right.
And a lot of the best business ideas have come from that pain point of, I wish there was an easier way to do this. That's the moment that someone should say, maybe I should design something or try to put a dent into this issue.
Right. And that's how I made the leap into my own podcast is on the industry side. Then I was realizing a lot of patients and people in the general public don't know what genomic medicine is or what's available to them. Like they're still seeing a lot of it as being research or specialty or very expensive. And so that was the whole purpose of doing All Access DNA, was to really just speak directly to the people that needed this type of testing.
Yeah, I think that it's great that the two podcasts that you're involved with are different markets. So you have All Access DNA that you're saying is really for lay people. So it's for anyone can listen. They don't need a background in genetics.
Right.
Whereas if they're tuning into DNA Dialogues, you do need to have a background in genetics for most episodes, I would say, at this point.
I would say it helps. So DNA Dialogues, and then what was nice is I was able to start on DNA Dialogues before I left my full-time gig. So that was kind of, as we're talking about entrepreneurship, that sort of helped me get familiar and get more into the podcasting landscape before I completely, left that full-time job and started 100% entrepreneur path. But with DNA Dialogues, it's great because it highlights research that's been published in the Journal of Genetic Counseling. And the research that we highlight, it's not just for genetic counselors. It's something that any physician, healthcare provider can learn from, because part of what we're seeing is genetics is really evolving and getting integrated into primary care, day-to-day life.
And the editor-in-chief, J9 or Janine Austin, they reached out to me and were like, hey, we're interested in starting a podcast. There's enough interest here. And so I had the opportunity to actually work with you guys to help launch it. And I just loved the concept that you all had come up with of bringing on the authors of these papers to chat about it for about 15 minutes. And you have two segments of that. And you kind of take papers that are relevant to each other and have a similar theme. I think it makes it so easy to be able to listen to as you're doing other things. And then if you're really intrigued by that, being able to go and read that paper and look into those authors. So I really love the setup of it and just like the ease of entry with that. Coming off of our workshop, is there anything, there's probably so much that you're walking away with of just information. We had awesome panelists. There were 6 of us up there. So I certainly I'm cheating. I have notes in front of me. But anything that you're like, I got to look into this, or ways that you want to expand within your entrepreneurship in the podcasting landscape.
Well, and I have to say, I'm very pleased to have coordinated the session because I was starting being an entrepreneur and I was like, there's so much more I need to know. So I was like, I'll just do a session and then I'll be able to learn a lot about it and get experts to come talk. Yeah, exactly. I would say, I think, some of the things that help to hear from folks like yourself who are much more established is that it does take time and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to have times where things feel like it's popping off, but also there's times where you're like really kind of just trudging through and getting to the next thing. And so it was just important to hear that anybody can face some of these challenges, but then people do overcome the challenges.
Yeah, I shared my own just journey of like starting the show. I was a high schooler for this show, and it was not my purpose to have this be a business. That came later. But that the show made $0 for 7 years. For me, it was all about networking, getting to meet all these people, interview these people, putting my name out there so that Sarah Lawrence would be like, yes, you can come to our program. So that happened. But I think, it takes a lot of years, and what you're investing is a lot of time at the beginning. And time is very valuable, because you could be working for someone else and just making a paycheck. And it's interesting thinking about the money aspect of things because we invest a lot of our time. But an issue that I have with a lot of people is they're not charging enough.
Yeah.
So that when I say, well, this is what I charge for my consulting or whatever it is, they're like, wow, that sometimes people say, oh, that's a lot. And I'm like, well, no, that really should be the standard. And Matt Shergi during his presentation was talking about that we really shouldn't be charging less than $150 an hour for the work that we're doing in genetics. So if you are a genetic counselor that has graduated from a program, probably taken your boards and passed. That equates to about 2 to 3 times the hourly rate of a standard, what is it, $106,000 salary is the average.
From the PSS. And I think what's interesting is, so I came from an industry background where I very much was very big on negotiations, very big on getting the titles that I was deserved, and getting the pay, getting the value that I was worth. But it is interesting when you change into the entrepreneurship, you can also sort of feel like, well, what do I ask for? I don't know. Like there's not as clear career ladder, right? Or pay ladder. So I think it was how he broke it down to say, all right, here's what an average genetic counselor makes. Here's how you can figure out the price per hour, basically.
Yeah. And I think if we're all on the same page with that, at least being the starting,
Mhm.
that you shouldn't be charging less than that for a general statement and just working your way up. Every time you renew a contract or every time you have someone saying, okay, we want to hire you again, that rate's more. Every
Right.
time you get a new client, you're looking, what did I charge last time? I'm going to up it for this one. So that because you can't just go to your boss and ask for a raise.
Right.
Because you don't have a boss. You're your own
Your
boss. And along with that too, you have to factor in, you're not getting 401k, you're not getting
Right.
health benefits. Maybe you have a partner that has that. So what I'm learning from this panel is be married and have a partner that has that. So I'll work on that. A little plug for myself there. But I think that's part of it, and
Mhm.
looking at how we need to be setting ourselves up for success in that way, because
Right.
you're being compensated in other ways.
Right, exactly. So I think it was important to learn like how to present yourself professionally. We talked a little bit, which I thought was interesting, is kind of presenting yourself as, having this company already being there. How do you continue to build it, but also making sure you have the foundations to go ahead and start the business. So again, which I think is what we wanted. We said, the whole thing is to think big, start small. And so that's really what, just have to start. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to know exactly what the roadmap will look like, and that's okay.
Yeah. Like you do just have to start,
Yeah.
fake it till you make it, I think
Yeah.
is how I've gotten here. Because someone will ask, well, what do you charge for this? Or how do you do this? Early on, you don't know. So you're making up, you're saying, oh, let me look at those documents and get back to you. AKA, I'm going to sit with myself and figure that out and then get back to you.
Mhm.
Another aspect I think within this is just like, I did some talking about like marketing.
Mm.
And I think it's so important to think about who you're marketing to. And that's going to change as you start. But we even talked about this a little bit already of like, your two shows have very different markets. So when you're on All Access DNA, you're not going to use acronyms like you might on DNA Dialogues, where genetic counselors, and I would venture to say other healthcare providers, know what NIPT is, NIPS. But you're not going to use those acronyms on All Access DNA. You do a good job of like being able to
Right.
balance that. I think it's important for people to have that in mind with their business too. So like for me, most people listening to DNA today, and this is not everybody, but like the most average person is located in the United States, identifies as female, and is a zillennial. They're kind of
Mhm.
right on that cusp. And they're usually a genetic counselor. So when I'm developing material, a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'm designing it for this person so that you really are able to reach them and design, for me, content or design your service or product to the person that you're trying to sell it to.
And I would say one of the things that I brought, I would say from my industry background, as being a product director, is your persona. So, and I love doing it because it's creative. So I'm like, this is Bonnie. They're my average
Yes,
listener.
name them.
Yes. And I give them attributes. I'm like, this is probably what they do for a living, right? This is, what their evening schedule looks like. And so that's been good too, to kind of make sure what I'm putting together is for that person.
Yeah. And I think in order to be able to expand businesses and keep it going and even honestly start is networking.
Yeah.
I have to say, out of everything, I think that's the one skill that I am pretty good at. When I go to NSGC, it's like a freaking social fest because I look up and I'm like, I know 20 people. Who do I talk to next? And so I think it's also just being good at talking to people that you don't know and
Yep.
going up when you're at a conference, going up to booths and saying, oh, like, what do you guys do? What do you want
Mhm.
genetic counselors to know about your company if you're a genetic counselor or whoever? So I think that that's important to be able to network and put yourself out there and know that like you will get rejected all the time and that's okay. Failure is a big part of science. And so that needs to be a part of our business model as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one area too that especially genetic counselors sometimes are not as comfortable with, right? We tend to be perfectionists to that degree. But I think the worst thing you could do is put yourself out there. You go say, hey, you introduce yourself, or you pitch an idea and they say no. And you're like, okay, well, I'm back where I was already to begin with.
Or they say, no, we don't want this because.
Yeah.
And now you have some information. Like
Right.
I will reach out to guests all the time that don't end up on the show.
Right.
If someone has a connection to Dr. Jennifer Doudna, hit me up because,
Yeah.
every 6 months or so, I reach out. I'm like, hey, any interest? Does she have availability? And so I think it's all about doing that.
Yeah.
And you never know who's going to say yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Kate, for pulling this session together because so many people I could tell were really getting such valuable information, but also just the confidence of a lot of us on the panel sharing like, these are issues we've had, or this is a lesson I learned, skip ahead and don't do what I did. So I think it was just really valuable for the people that were there, but also like I was writing down clearly for people watching the video, so many notes of like, I need to go back and see, am I doing this right? Do I have the right malpractice that Smitha was talking about? So I think it was just so valuable even for myself, and just thank you for all the hard work you did of like putting it together as the moderator.
Thank you so much for being on the panel. Like I learned a ton, and also just thank you for helping out with both DNA Dialogues and All Access DNA.
Definitely all under the Gene Pool Media brand. Yes. So yeah, we're all one big happy family. So yeah, everybody go check out Kate Wilson's shows. Thanks for watching DNA Today. To access all of our episodes, head over to dnatoday.com. We also have a lot of bonus content on there that you can enjoy. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, guest pitches, you name it, send them in to info@dnatoday.com. We'd also really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. It really helps more nerds like yourself find the show. Also, if you like giveaways and other ways to connect with us, I recommend following us on social. We're at DNA Today Podcast. We also have a Patreon if you want to be the most level involved in the show. That's also at DNA Today Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Join us next time to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.